There we go. I hit go live and it didn't go live. So, can't ignore some of the news that's happening, but we're going to be a lot in the scripture today. So, today is July 1st. It's a Thursday. This is 2021. Just going to remind you that Mike from Around the World is on with Pastor Paul Begley tonight at, I don't know, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, I think. Maybe a little after that. Um, I think Mike usually comes on at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. Paul does a little news stuff beforehand. The Supreme Court, two different rulings. They upheld Arizona's election integrity laws, which of course is a blow to what the Democrats desire for fraud. And we know that Larry, in working with Bill Clinton here, we're going to talk a little bit about why Larry did what he did. We're going to get to that when we get into Proverbs 1. But, he said that he did things for money. It was all about, the income. I appreciate as a man, he wanted to provide for his children. But I think at some point the love of money got to his heart, and he was doing things to be paid well. I think paid well is relative, but he did at one point in his life own the maybe biggest or second biggest house in Conway. And he owned the second largest recording studio in Nashville. And he lost all of that when he realized doing good was more important than what you had. And so when he went after Bill, and of course the Clintons came after him legally, thank God for his photographic memory, because he had to get educated a lot in law, and I think he's able to read pretty quickly as well as retain it all. So he was able to represent himself until he was representing himself in Texas for some reason because of something he was doing there, until they changed the law so he could no longer do that. Representing yourself is very difficult because you have to really know the law well, because they will throw so much paperwork at you with a very short time limit to get everything returned. And so if you're part of a law firm, you can have other people helping you. If you are representing yourself alone, you are not allowed to get help. So in the process of what he did to take the Clintons down, which I think he has now succeeded in doing. But what a long fight it was. And in the meantime, he lost everything. So he lived in a small house, when I met him here. Lived in a small house, and he had to stop working because of the danger to people around him when they started coming after him with assassination attempts. And they started those assassination attempts very early. And then he'd have a lull, but he was always worried about when they would start up again and how safe anybody would be who was around him. So usually he got some kind of tip off, and he'd have his family go into hiding, and while he dealt with it. So that was hard on the family. I just can't imagine what I can't imagine what they had to go through. I just can't. I can't even imagine it. So my gratitude for them, for what they had to put up with, is equal to my gratitude for you and helping me to keep him alive. So the Supreme Court is going to allow states to vote election integrity laws. That is a real victory for us, but of course a real bugaboo. Biden, I understand, has made a statement very upset about it. And, the Democrats, Larry told us that the Democrats have cheated for many, many decades and have perfected the ability to cheat. I mean, Larry was on the news back when Bill was running for president, I think. And he was on the radio saying, hey, if you will switch your vote to Bill Clinton, I'll give you $5,000. Well, look at what's happening in the country with people. If the lotteries will give you a $20 coupon to use at the grocery store, or we'll give you free donuts, or we'll give you, put your name in a lottery. You've got 1 million people in a lottery. You might win $1 million, but you're 1 in 1 million. The things that people are being suckered into doing. Larry said they used to drive busloads of people from precinct to precinct to vote multiple times, and they would just change their T-shirt. And they go, sometimes they'd stay at the same place, change their T-shirt, and go back into the very same place in a different shirt with a different name on a card that they could go pretend that they were. And so the voter ID, where you have your picture, yes, Heavenly, that's what I was talking about. Picture ID, voter ID is really, really important to verify who you are. And then the person who's taking your ID needs to look you in the face and say, and recognize that you really are who matches your picture ID. So, it's not that it's foolproof and perfect, but at least put things in place so that it can be done. California had a case that was they ruled on in the Supreme Court today that nonprofit, this is another good thing, nonprofits do not have to reveal their donor list, their list of donor names. So that's another really good thing. Question: did Meghan McCain resign from The View today? Why? I don't watch TV. I don't have TV, so I didn't see it. I don't know what time it even comes on to know. But if you have a TV, I'd sure appreciate hearing back from you whether she really did resign. And is there a chance that she's under indictment? I don't know. I'm just asking questions because I don't know. We have rights that are given to us by God and given to us by our Constitution. And I really appreciate somebody I listened to this morning who talked about we need to use our rights or we will lose them. And he was mentioned, it might have even been Intercessors for America, but he mentioned the church, the fact that they closed down the churches, and yet the few people who stayed open, even if they got arrested, the Supreme Court has ruled in their favor. Just even the pastor down in Louisiana, Tony Weld. Anyhow, I mean, even he, the pastor in California that kept his church open has won his cases. Rodney Howard Brown kept his church open. He made all kinds of accommodations with a new air filtering unit, keeping people, separated by families and not sitting right next to each other, putting space between the pews. And then even when it wasn't too cold, they would even meet outside. And they still wanted them shut down. Don't we realize this is communist takeover to get rid of the church because they want to bring in worship of Satan or Lucifer? We need to be calling our state governors and members of the legislature to say no to vaccine mandates, say no to vaccine passports. We need to be letting our voices be known. I have made my state rep, for where I live, I've let him know. And I need to do it again. I just keep hounding him. Yes, John MacArthur. John MacArthur made a statement recently that was phenomenal. I wish I could remember what it was. It's gone around on the internet a few times. I've seen it on Facebook. I think he was talking about, just say no. OAN reported that Al Arabia has put out a report that Ilhan Omar sold U.S. secrets to Qatar and Iran. So why do we still see her running around? That just doesn't seem right to me. On the other hand, her name is on the list for people who've been indicted. So, I don't know. I heard that some of these lists that we're seeing are not true. Other people I see are copying it and passing it around. So I don't know what to think. At some point, they're going to make it a little more clear, and I'm looking forward to that. So I wanted to read James. I've got several different passages we're going to read before we get to Proverbs. Just checking the time. Okay. This is James 1, verses 2 and 3. Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And verse 4, perseverance must finish its work so you may be mature and complete and not lack anything. You know, the process, I was texting with somebody this morning, and I said the process that God uses to make us more like him is really hard. But the good result is something we never could have imagined possible for ourselves. For example, I was a very impatient person growing up. As a teenager, I was so impatient. My sister didn't move fast enough. And if I was helping we were both helping to dry dishes, you know, she would walk very slowly across the kitchen and I would be darting here and there, get the dish, you know, and put it in the cupboard. And I just wanted it done quick. And she just was enjoying being with mom, I suppose. Anyhow, you know, so that to say, I was a very impatient teenager. And then God gave me multiple kids with special needs. I had to learn patience. I had to learn self-control. I can't say I was doing well through the process, but it took time. It took a lot of years, almost 30 years. But, you know, by the end of that, I was a very different person from what I was going into parenthood. Here's another. I was very lonely in Jamaica. And yet, you know, I've told you the story about the church in Antioch where they were combining a Christian church with a lot of pagan rituals and witchcraft. And also from my dad's messages, I learned a lot about witchcraft. Well, I have that in my background. And so recognizing it has been, for example, Bewitched used to be such a cute TV show, and yet I would see the occult in there, and I would tell my kids to turn it off. Or they'd be watching some show, and I would hear something. I'd go running into the TV room and see what was going on, and I'd say, turn it off, that's witchcraft. And I'd talk to them about it. Now, whether that ever sunk in and stuck with them, I don't know. But I did at least know enough, and I thank God. For as difficult as that experience was growing up on the mission field, I thank God for the things I learned. And that just, you know, makes me think about faith plus obedience that it talks about in James 2. We demonstrate our faith by what we do. The importance of trust and obey, because that's what develops our character. The obedience that goes along with our faith develops our character. And we need to get to the point where we never give up. And we're at that point now where we can't give up our principles. We need to stand on what we have learned and what we know is right. We've got choices. We're faced with choices all the time. Are we choosing between good and evil? Which direction are we landing on? You know, it says the love of money is the root of all evil. So, you know, people who are doing evil things for money, as Larry did, and feels very guilty about, because, you know, when he came to his senses, that stopped. But, you know, and he was proof of the redemption of the Lord, the forgiveness of Jesus Christ, the atonement that came with Jesus substituting. But it's not money it's not money that's evil. Money in itself is not evil. Money is strictly a tool in somebody's hand. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil. And it's the root of all evil. And it's been interesting to watch people talk about that on Telegram recently. John talks about the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. The lust of the eyes is your love for money. The lust of the flesh would be, sexual power over somebody. The pride of life, the desire for fame and power. We need to be I heard somebody say we need to be, with what's going on to drain the swamp and so on. It must be done by the book. Well, what book? And then the next post they had was a picture of Trump holding up the Bible at St. John's Church across the street from the White House. And it's been interesting that they have now proven that the clearing of the street at the park across the street was not so Trump could safely walk across the street. They had cleared that park because of the danger of the protests going on. And it had nothing to do with him walking across the street. We need to think about the Georgia Guidestones, because they say that we should only have 500 million people and everybody else needs to die. Well, how many of the elite are there that are involved in all the wickedness that's going on? We're going to get to that in scripture. We're going to get to this in Proverbs 1. But, a curse that is undeserved comes back on the head of the person who's sending this curse. So the Georgia Guidestones is cursing the population of the world. But folks, don't forget the executive order from December 21st, 2017, that gives the right to confiscate all possessions of the wicked anywhere in the world, not just in the U.S., but anywhere in the world. We helped provide for that executive order because our former leader is the one who wrote it. I'm not sure that it ended up, going into the log in the way he wrote it, because his writing skills kind of needed a little editing. But yeah. So, we can pray that God's word, for example, Proverbs 26:2, I think it's 26:2, a curse that is not deserved does not alight. So with this curse from the Georgia Guidestones of what they want to happen, we need to be looking at what the Georgia Guidestones say, and we need to be praying against it. All right, we're going to go over first, before Proverbs 1, we're going to go over to a couple of Psalms because of something that caught my eye this morning. Psalm 10, hang on, I got to move my paper because I'm going to need that in a bit. Why do you stand so far off, O Lord? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? In his arrogance, the wicked man hunts down the weak who are caught in the schemes he devises. Boy, we sure see a lot of people being caught in Fauci's schemes right now, in my opinion. Strictly an opinion. He boasts of the cravings of his heart. Boy, that reminds me of Nancy Pelosi. Did you see her video where she showed all her very, very expensive gourmet ice cream, boasting about what she could have in her freezer? So he boasts of the craving of his heart, or she does. He blesses the greedy and reviles the Lord. In his pride, the wicked does not seek God. In his thoughts, there's no room for God. His ways are always prosperous, or so it seems. Why in the world is Dianne Feinstein putting up her house for sale in Reno, Nevada for over $40 million on a senator salary? So he's haughty. God's laws are far from him. He sneers at all his enemies. He says to himself, nothing's going to shake me. I'll always be happy. I'm never going to have trouble. Boy, we can just go through a list of names on that one. His mouth is full of curses and lies and threats. Boy, that sounds like Gates. Trouble and evil are under his tongue. Thanks, Fauci. He lies in wait near the villages. From ambush, he murders the innocent, waiting in secret for his victims. He lies in wait like a lion undercover. He lies in wait to catch the helpless. He catches the helpless and drags them off in his net. That reminds me of what Comey had done in Houston, rounding up all the homeless after the hurricane flooded Houston and taking them out onto a barge, putting them in the guillotine and then throwing them overboard. His victims are crushed and they collapse. They fall under his strength. He says to himself, God is forgotten. He covers his face and never sees. Arise, O Lord, lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless. Why does the wicked man revile God? Why does he say to himself, he won't call me to account? But you do see trouble and grief, O God. You consider it. You consider it and do something. The victim commits himself to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. And then Psalm 14, verses 1 and 2. The fool says in his heart, we're going to be talking about the fool in Proverbs 1 next. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. Their deeds are vile. There's no one who does good. But the Lord looks down from heaven on the sons of man to see if there are any. The Lord is looking down to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. Thank you, Heavenly Cloud. Appreciate those prayers for sure. So the Proverbs of Solomon, we're going to read a chapter a day during the month of July, as long as we have internet service. If it goes dark, then I guess we'll pick up and catch up what we missed in August. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for attaining wisdom. Now, what is wisdom? Wisdom is seeing life from God's perspective. So these proverbs are to help you get wisdom and discipline. Now, Hebrews 12 talks about discipline. It says, my son, don't make light of the Lord's discipline. God will discipline us, and discipline has to do with training in righteousness. Don't lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes everyone he accepts as a son. So endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as a son. For what son is not disciplined by his father? If you're not disciplined, then you're an illegitimate son and not true children. So you need to submit to God. So we're going to learn things that will help us gain wisdom and discipline. For understanding, words of insight. We all want some insight into things. And don't forget, Psalm 119:99 says that I know more than all my teachers. I have more understanding than all my teachers. Children who are raised to know the Lord can have more understanding even than their teachers. I mean, I found that true in my education. And I saw some of my kids had found that true with theirs because of knowing God's way. For acquiring a disciplined and prudent life, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to the simple. So prudence is good judgment and good sense. And the simple are naive. It says here, the simple is too inexperienced to understand wisdom. The simple, on the other hand, the simple have potential to become wise if they make the effort, or they will become a fool if they choose not to seek wisdom. These are notes that I have in my Bible. So God wants the simple or the naive to have prudence or good judgment and good sense. So we're going to get knowledge and discretion. Discretion gives us the ability to plan ahead. It also includes with it discernment, being able to see the difference between right and wrong. So you're going to get these proverbs will give knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance or steering for understanding prophets and parables and the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning. It's not, the fear of the Lord isn't all knowledge, but it's the beginning of knowledge. So if you really want to get knowledge and insight, start with the fear of the Lord. Recognize that God is to be feared. It's appropriate to be afraid as well as reverent and in awe. But fools despise wisdom and discipline. So saying that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, it's the beginning, it's the essence, it's the controlling principle of getting wisdom and knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and knowledge because the fool is morally deficient and hates wisdom. They just want to be silly. Boy, I tell you, we see a lot of those kinds of TV shows, right? Beavis and Butthead and things like that. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction. Don't forsake your mother's teaching, because they will be a garland and grace to your head and a chain to adorn your neck. And if you see a child growing up without godly parents, pray that the Lord will put in their life somebody that they can look up to as a parent to train them. My son, if sinners entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come along with us, let's lie in wait for someone's blood, like Antifa's been doing. Let's waylay some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave and swallow them whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things. Why is Antifa doing what it's doing? For money, for greed. We're going to get all sorts of valuable things. Come throw in your lot with us, because we're going to get all kinds of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. This is the love of money again. Throw in your lot with us and we will share it. Oh my goodness. Did you ever read Oliver Twist in high school? That's where the guy took these homeless kids, provided minimal housing and food, minimal. And yet they were supposed to go out and do pickpocketing to enrich him. So, yeah, we're going to share things in common. Look at BLM, the leaders of BLM. Are they sharing in common with the black people? No. They're enriching themselves with multi-million-dollar houses. My son, don't go along with them. Don't set foot on their path, for their feet rush into sin, and they're swift to shed blood. How useless it is to spread a net in view of all the birds. And remember, Jesus said, you're more valuable than any sparrow. These men lie in wait for their own blood, for their own blood. That's the curse that comes back on their own head. They waylay only themselves. Such is the end of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the lives of those who get it. But of course, to take away the life, you have to have somebody good who's going to bring justice. And there again, we have the contrast to what Larry said. Who are you going to call? Who can you call? Because Soros was funding the down ballots. So you see the sheriff in Maricopa County refusing to turn over the passwords. If the sheriff is evil, the prosecutor's evil, the judge is evil, and will only support the wicked and not provide true justice, how do you get justice? How are things made right? So I'm looking forward to when we get the 24/7 emergency broadcast indicating what these evil people have done that we didn't realize. And I'm sorry about your loss, Heavenly. We will be praying for you. Well, thanking God for your release from a fool and asking the Lord to give you guidance on your path for what's next. Okay. Wisdom calls aloud in the street. So now wisdom is personified here like a woman. She raises her voice in the public square. At the head of the noisy street, she cries out. In the gates of the city, she makes her speech. So she's going to ask the simple who are silly and easily seduced and deceived. So she's asking them, how long will you simple ones love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? If you had responded to my rebuke, I would have poured out my heart to you and made my thoughts known to you. Psalm 46:10 says, be still and know that I am God. God is the source of wisdom. You know, I mentioned yesterday the spirit of wisdom. It's one of the manifestations of the Holy Spirit, having wisdom. So, you know, we're to know God, and that takes being still before him. But since you rejected me, you rejected wisdom, you also rejected God by doing that. No one gave heed when I stretched out my hand. Since you ignored all my advice and would not accept my rebuke, I in turn will laugh at your disaster. Now that again is back in Psalm 2, where it says that the Lord holds them in derision. You know, why did the heathen rage and the nations imagine something vain? The Lord of the heavens holds them in derision, and he laughs at them. I will mock when calamity overtakes you. You know, I have to say that if Real Raw News is true, and I have somebody who calls me when I haven't stayed up on it, and they'll read to me what the latest post is. She read some of the comments under yesterday's post. And again, folks, I don't know if they're telling the truth or not. Somebody said it's not true. But on the other hand, if there's any truth to it, there was laughter both in the comments and in our reaction. On the one hand, I felt very, very sad at the arrogance and the unwillingness to repent. But I rejoiced that justice was served well. If it, like I said, if it's true. We are not to laugh at the calamity somebody gets, even if it's deserved, because God may turn away his anger from the wicked one and turn it against us. On the other hand, it is appropriate to rejoice when justice is served. Okay. So I'm going to mock you when calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, and when distress and troubles overwhelm you. Then they will call to me, but I'm not going to answer. This again is Psalm 2. They will look for me, but they're not going to find me. Since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, since they would not accept my advice and spurned my rebuke, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. There's also Psalm 7:16 that says, the trouble he causes recoils on himself. His violence comes down on his own head. And if it's true what Real Raw News said about Comey, then that is exactly what happened to Comey. His violence came back on his own head or neck. And then Proverbs 26:2, that is where a curse that is not deserved doesn't alight. And there's another verse, and I thought it was in Isaiah, but I couldn't find it this morning, that says that it actually goes back on the head of the one sending the curse if it's not deserved. If it's not deserved by, if person A is cursing person B and it's not deserved, then it's going to go back on person A. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. So, interesting association of complacency and foolishness. Whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm. And this whole concept of being at ease without fear of harm, Psalm 4 talks about how God gives his beloved sleep. And great peace have those who love God's word. I'm not going to repeat anything that came out of Real Raw News, but Heavenly Clouds, I would suggest you go to realrawnews.com and read what's been going on. It's reporting what is supposedly going on at Gitmo, but I have no way of, I haven't seen any confirmation of that. I've seen people copying what's on Real Raw News and posting it, but I don't see anybody saying it in a different way, or we've seen no photographs. We've seen, I have seen no confirmation. So I can say go there and make your own decision about whether you believe it or not. I certainly want to believe it, but I don't know. So I'm skeptical. And I got a call yesterday saying that it's not true. I have no idea. I have no idea. Sometimes we just need hope that something's going to come, that justice is coming. And even if it's hope porn, there are times when hope, even in a lie, is comforting, but we have to guard our hearts with all diligence. That's another verse that comes out of Proverbs. We'll get to it eventually. Guard your heart with all diligence, because out of your heart are the issues of life. Remember, we've got 3 brain areas. You've got the brain that's inside your skull. You've got the one in your gut, which is your intestinal and stomach area. And you also have one in your heart, where your heart knows or your gut knows. We need to listen to those things. We need to be asking, Lord, if this is true, then I thank you for justice. But Lord, I need the confirmation that this is true. And we can pray that. And I will tell you why. I can give you a personal example. My daughter is probably vaccine damaged severely. Life was really tough. And as she approached 21, I said, God, we usually consider 18 to 21 as becoming an adult. I said, I need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that my child is covered under the blood and will be in heaven. It was easy to believe that when she was little, because I believe children will go to heaven when they have not achieved a level of mental ability to understand things. But once she was an adult, I felt insecure about it, and I asked God for proof. God, and I also told him, I said, I realize I'm asking for something I don't deserve you to answer this. And if you choose not to, I will still love you and serve you and do my best with what contact I still have with her to say something and do something if she even understands. But I said, God, I need to know. She got pneumonia really bad. She had to be hospitalized. And I hadn't gotten my confirmation from the Lord yet. And so I begged for the Lord to let her live, even though as hard as it was. I called for the elders of the church, as it talks about in James 5. I asked for the elders to come and pray over her at the hospital. Now, I was going to a church in Virginia, but it wasn't that far from the hospital she was at. The only one friend of mine who was an elder and his wife came. He said that the other elders were busy, so they couldn't come. They came, and he read the passage in James 5. And then he prayed over her, and as he was praying, he quoted the passage in James 5. And James 5 says, if any of you are sick, let him call for the elders of the church to come and pray over him. And it said, and the Lord will raise him up, and if he has committed any sins, they will be forgiven. My daughter grabbed my hand and pulled on it and tugged at me until I looked at her. She couldn't speak. She still can't speak. But the intensity in her eyes, I have never before or since seen that intensity. And with her eyes, she communicated to me, and she took my hand and tapped her heart. And her eyes communicated to me, I get it, Mom. And 3 days later, she bounced out of bed, and I had to call the doctor, and I said, you got to get us out of here because I can't keep her in this bed. She's raring to go. And the Lord fully healed her from the pneumonia. Now, God didn't heal anything else, but that to me was confirmation that God had kept his word, that her sins were forgiven, and I have her security confirmed by the Lord. Jane, thank you. Job said at the end of the book, what I feared most has come upon me. And we know that in Job 1 and 2, Satan went before God. And God said, have you seen my son, my servant Job? He's a godly man. And Job said, does he serve you for nothing? Let me touch him. And God gave him permission to do anything Satan wanted except to take his life. And his life was completely destroyed. And he said at the end, it was what I feared most is what came upon me. And so, Peggy, Jane, you are absolutely right. We have to be very careful about what we fear. And it is okay to ask the Lord for the desires of our heart, but we also with that have to be willing for him to say no. And sometimes he does. And that is John, 3 John, I think verse 3, I have no greater joy than to know that my children are walking in the truth. That is an amazing comfort on your son, Peggy. I'm glad that you had that kind of confirmation. So you just had the anniversary of his death. I walked another friend through the anniversary of her son's death just a few weeks ago again. So I will say I'm sorry for your loss. But blessed in the sight of the Lord are the death of his saints, because we know where they are. And last night I was listening I started to listen to some of Larry's old shows on 4th of July. And I listened to a couple seconds, and somebody that I shared it with said how comforting it was to hear his voice again. And I went, I want that. I want to feel comforted by that. That will come at some point. But for me, it just made me cry, because I just really miss him being here with us. But on the other hand, in the midst of grieving the loss, I also rejoice greatly that he's in heaven, and perhaps he is able to advocate with the Father on our behalf in a way that we can't even do here for ourselves. So that your son declared that his purpose was to glorify God is fabulous. What a comfort. What a comfort. And that was that in the same vein, Larry's last message to us, his last statement to us. There is nothing more important than seeking God's face. So let's be challenged by Peggy's son and what he wrote, and also, by what Larry said. And let's seek God's face. Now, this is the 1st of July. I heard something significant supposed to happen tomorrow. I have no idea what. Now, remember, our founding fathers decided July 2nd, 1776, that they were going to secede from England. And then they gave Thomas Jefferson a couple days to write the Declaration of Independence, and then they all signed it on the 4th. We celebrate the 4th, but it was actually, man, that makes me want to cry, Peggy. It was actually July 2nd when they decided that they were going to be independent, that we were going to be a free and independent country. So we've got the weekend to think about this and to celebrate. Folks, go to Larry Nichols live, Larry Nichols live is the channel, his former channel, and you can find his Independence Day message. You can also find at Larry Nichols official channel, this channel, July 4th or July 3rd. I don't remember. It might have been the 3rd, 2018. It would have been, anyhow, trying to think what day of the week it would have been. Anyway, July 2018, and Larry Nichols Live was the channel for the 2016 message, and Larry Nichols official channel for the 2018 message. It's worth listening to. It was very inspiring, very historical. I'd highly recommend that if you can stand to listen, that you do that. I don't think I can yet. As much as I really, really want to, I don't think I can handle my reaction. But if you can handle it, then I would strongly recommend those two. We are going to save them so we can play them again in the future when I can handle it. God bless you. Tonight on, again, Paul Begley on YouTube at 9:30 Eastern. He comes on, and Mike from around the world joins him at 10 Eastern, and should be a significant. Mike from around the world always has some big bombshell. He has to talk in a bit of a coded message, but listen carefully, and hopefully you can figure out what he's warning about. So, all right, guys. Thank you for being here, and we'll talk again tomorrow as long as the internet's up. Okay, bye.